Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our August 28th, 2024 board meeting. It is now 6:01 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. Next thing on the agenda is roll call. I'm going to be starting from my right. If you're present, please indicate your name.
Jessica Ochoa, present.
Carlos Margo, present.
Anita Chavez, present.
Alisa Peña, present.
Rosalba Hernandez, present.
Celso Gomez Jr., present.
Everyone's present. We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. I please ask everyone to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Again, welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Friendly reminder that those that are providing comments this evening, you're given 3 minutes. Our Vice President, Anita Chavez, will be timing you at the end of 3 minutes when your time is up. She will let you know. And so do we have anyone that signed up for public comment? Madam Secretary?
Yes, we have 5 speakers, and today we're going to start with Ms. Norma Flores. If you want to make your way to the podium, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I come to say thank you for stripping students the ability to comprehend and retain material. My daughter in 8th grade has had to come home and ask her older sister to help her. Why? Because you have taken the one aspect of school that enhances one's understanding, note-taking, which is a research-based strategy. From elementary to high school, note-taking has always been focused heavily on, and there are multiple studies to back why that is, such as a study done in psychological science by Mueller and Oppenheimer 2014. Students who took notes by hand performed better on assignments than those who typed their notes. The reason? Writing by hand requires you to actively process and rephrase the information, which leads to deeper understanding and better retention. But the benefits of note-taking don't stop there. Note-taking also improves your ability to concentrate. When you're actively engaged in summarizing and organizing the material, you're less likely to be distracted. This increases lead to improved comprehension and retention of the material, making your study sessions more effective. Furthermore, note-taking helps you develop critical thinking skills. You're not just passively absorbing information, you're actively making sense of it. Why? Which is a key to component of learning. Research from the University of Washington highlights that students who take organized notes tend to perform better in school. This is because well-instructed notes provide a clear and concise summary of the material, making it easier to review and understand later. Moreover, note-taking is a skill that extends beyond the classroom. In the professional world, the ability to take effective notes is crucial for meetings, presentations, and ongoing projects. It is a transferable skill that enhances your ability to communicate, collaborate, and stay organized, qualities that are highly valued in any career. So in conclusion, not only have you stripped away my daughters, but all the students of La Joya ISD ability to understand and retain what they are learning, but also their chances of ever using this research-based life skill in the professional world. If you have a desire to lead, you must genuinely care about the success, well-being, and development of every child at La Joya ISD. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Excuse me, 1 second. One of the executive directors, can you please meet with this parent to find out what campus and what is happening with note-taking so that we can learn more about this particular issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Secretary Peña, our next speaker.
Yes, next we have Joe Moncada. If you can please make your way to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Joe Moncada, a proud Palmview High School top athlete and concerned parent. For the past 7 years, I have donated all my spare time and sponsored many things to a surrounding generation of kids. It has gone as far as weekly trainings, coaching, games, uniforms, shoes, gear, or travel expenses to support our kids. Several years back, I made a big decision to make my kids move to La Joya ISD because I had been very impressed on how high on education and extracurricular activities this district was. All the staff, from teachers to coaches, will go out of their way to ensure that my kids were good. In fact, on the prior school district, my son had many issues passing regular classes, and even after asking for help, none was given. Yet coming into the La Joya ISD, we were prompted support on education that easily had my son in pre-AP classes with A and B honor roll. Sadly, as this past year has come to La Joya ISD has become the district to not be in. Many of our programs and great programs have been punished, which is why I am here today. You all may care or probably not care, but the Valley has a lot of culture and spirit from small hometown hearts. You were sent here for about 3 to 4 years, but soon after you will probably leave. You more than likely don't have kids here or ever will, but we do. Kids that have worked very hard to be the best in dancing, in football, and basketball, and soccer, and volleyball, and many extracurricular activities. Many parents and coaches and staff, as myself, have put many extra free hours of summer, after school, or weekends to make sure that these programs end up successful. And let me tell you, we have had many successful programs for years because of that. You can't demand schools and programs to bring in those high prices and trophies when you take away what has gotten them there in the first place. For years, I have been training free of charge for basketball high school kids, as well as volleyball girls, elementary kids. I buy every year insurance for them too to ensure that La Joya ISD has no liability. All we have ever requested is for us to be available to have perhaps some gyms that we can train our kids for free. In Palmview, we have a gym known as Pack Gym. That gym was removed from us years back because the school wanted to sell it. Yet it's been sitting there collecting dust for the past years, and now we have the sports, the dancers, and many more sharing that same one gym. I am here today asking from you all to please not hold our kids from being great. Don't punish our kids for what prior grown-ups did. The resources that I am asking for you today are the facilities that are paid by us, possibly the taxpayers and the city and the district. We were told in this past year that you wanted to charge a high amount of money just to have usage of those gyms or facilities. I'm not asking for funds, and I am not asking for support. The only support that I do ask is access to gyms, to facilities that will help me continue, or other parents, make these kids that are our kids here in La Joya ISD be great again. Because once again, at the end of the day, this is all for the kids. And as I can see, you guys are here today to also be for them. Don't shut down the buildings, the facilities, or our kids' dreams. I have earned the trust and the respect from many kids, teachers, and coaches, and I hope that I can earn yours as well. I welcome you to
Excuse
be part
me,
of
sir,
our...
your 3 minutes have expired. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
1 second.
Yes,
Ms. Gomez
Dr. Sorensen?
Perez, can you please meet with the speaker? I'm sorry. Mr. Moncada, if you can meet with him, Chief Gomez Perez.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Our next speaker, Secretary Peña.
We have Jasmine Hernandez.
Good evening. I attended La Joya ISD all my life, and I'm proud to say I graduated last year. I have a younger brother in high school who has never once struggled with the subject, top of his class every year. So it was such a big surprise to me when I found out he was struggling in a subject he excelled at all his life. However, when he showed me his math journal, I immediately knew the issue. You took students' best way of learning. My brother has 0 notes on the topic. The topic he's learning, and said they aren't allowed to take notes, nor is the teacher allowed to give notes, instead they go based off a book. I have multiple journals I've kept from my previous years. I've kept despite me graduating already. I've kept them because they assist me in refreshing my memory and better my understanding, as it does to every other student. I graduated top of my class, getting into A&M College Station, A&M Kingsville, A&M Corpus Christi. Every A&M you can name, I got into it. Even UT Austin and Baylor accepted me. I graduated with every stone. I did not get that by sitting in a room reading a book. I took notes, Cornell notes to be specific. Yeah, I hated them, but now I'm so thankful I was taught how to properly note take. Because now that I'm in college, I'm taking rigorous courses like organic chem, statistics, and calculus. I'm not sure what world you're trying to build where you think note-taking isn't important, especially when I'm sure all of you have taken those before. and I'm positive they were all beneficial to you. Another issue I wanted to address is FFA. I had 2 cousins who attended La Jolla ISD but recently moved to Mission with the removal of FFA, and I know they will not be the only students you lose because of your choices. Multiple students put a lot of time, effort, and money into their animals and gain experience through this organization. A lot of money from the community goes into this group, and you took that away. You're supposed to help bring students to this district and not remove them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, Secretary Peña.
We have Brittany Gonzalez, if you can please make your way to the podium.
Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Dr. Sorensen. My name is Brittany Gonzalez. Estoy aquí una vez más para expresar mis preocupaciones considerando el programa bilingüe y plan de estudios para los estudiantes de Pre-K 3 y 4. Me encantaría una explicación sobre cómo es que se preocupan tanto por la asistencia de los estudiantes, pero de qué sirve traerlos todos los días si pasan mayoría del día jugando con poca instrucción y por algunos estudiantes en un idioma que ni entienden. La falta de consideración de parte del distrito en no proveer clases monolingües de inglés en cada escuela primaria se puede considerar discriminación. Les pregunto, ¿dónde está el legado de excelencia que presumen tener? For any who may not have understood, my first question to you would be, how uncomfortable did that make you feel? To which my follow-up question is, can you imagine how it would make a 3 or 4-year-old feel, and their parents for that matter? Especially if they struggle with things such as speech delay. I don't understand the reason for eliminating monolingual classrooms entirely throughout the district, and I don't care to. The district should not have more say than parents when it comes to our children's education, and English monolingual instruction should still be an option on every campus. Before your students are your students, they are first our children. Though you are not allowed to respond during the public comments, you should know concerned parents are still waiting for you to take action. Failure to do so will only lead parents to do what they need to for their child. Perhaps default to idea public schools as they have been, discover the variety of homeschool options, or even unschool. I ask that the concerns shared today not be a waste of breath. Parents are not insignificant people, and such matters regarding our children should have been left to parents to decide. The enforcement of this dual language program for all classrooms demonstrates a substantial lack of consideration for students that struggle with different levels of learning disorders. That is not a good look for a district whose image claims to be building a legacy of excellence. I'd like to address that the district's choice to exclude parents' opinions before making a mandatory decision has not only affected the district's representation, obstructed students' academics, caused some parents to unenroll their children, discourage enrollments, but also caused parents to endure harsh comments on social media for simply speaking up for their children. I stand with the parents who continue to stand up for their children, regardless of the backlash the district's decisions is responsible for. I'll end with this. There is a difference between learning concepts in Spanish and learning how to be fluent in it. This program does not benefit all students, therefore English-only instruction should be an option for every student on every campus. Students are already graduating with poor grammar and mediocre reading skills in one language. My fear is this program won't fix no sabo kids, but it will create a bigger academic setback for students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Secretary Peña, our last speaker.
We have Daisy Solis.
Hello, my name is Daisy Solis, and I am a concerned parent in my children's future. I had to withdraw my all-English daughter from Corina Peña Elementary due to the new bilingual program, which she was so upset about. When her class has carpet time, which is when all the kids go to the carpet so the teacher can read books to them, my daughter does not understand a word the teacher's saying because the books are all in Spanish. So what is a 3-4-year-old going to do if they don't understand anything? They will wander off. They will find something else that catches their attention. And because of that, she was put in reflection time, which is timeout, several times. I told the teacher my daughter only understands and talks English. The teacher then told me they get in trouble for speaking to the students in English. The district is failing my child as well as more all-English students who are just starting school for the very first time. The district does not have English classes for pre-K, much less pre-K 3. Only bilingual, which by bilingual they mean 90% Spanish and only 10% English, and that's just math, according to my daughter's school. I've been in La Jolla all my life, and my 2 boys as well. And I remember we used to get in trouble for speaking Spanish in class, and also when we spoke to our friends. We were told that we needed to practice our English. I've been through the change of tax to STAR, which is more difficult, and I don't see how this bilingual program will help the students who English is their primary language. Just because we're in the Rio Grande Valley, so close to the border, does not mean we all speak Spanish, nor that we are all Hispanics, nor that our new generations have to know Spanish. This is discrimination. Also, if pre-K 3 or pre-K is not mandatory, why have it? What about the right to every student? La Jolla, please take all students into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Secretary Pena, do we have any others that have signed up for public comment?
That's it.
Seeing that we have none, let's go to agenda item 5, which has a couple of items that we need to go over. First one being 5.1, discussion of the 2024 La Jolla ISD Spring Star Academic Performance and Verified District Rating. Dr. Little and other members of staff.
So coming up to the podium, I'd like to introduce Dr. Little, Chief of Academics and School Leadership, Mr. Duque, the Director of Assessment and Accountability, and Ms. Melinda Flores, Executive Director of Assessment, Accountability, and School Quality. They are going to share a presentation with us, not only the board, but the community and those of us in the audience, regarding the 2024 La Jolla ISD Spring Star Academic Performance and Verified, and they will explain what verified means, district rating for the STAR. So we are very excited to share this with not only the board, but the community, as there has been lots of conversation around STAR performance, not only here in La Jolla, but across the state. So Dr. Little, take it away.
Thank you, Superintendent. Really happy to share this information tonight for a few reasons. One, there are things in here that we are going to celebrate in the presentation. There are also things in here that are going to help paint our path forward because they start to challenge us as a district in our pursuit of educational excellence. And this helps inform future conversations that we're going to have as we set goals for the district and pursue our work with Lone Star governance. We want to start by situating this in the context of actually where we are in the state right now when it comes to accountability and what's going on. And then we will obviously dig into sharing our data and look to what we are doing this year in response to it. I think we're missing a slide somewhere, but I can still speak to what was there, which is just capturing what's going on in the state today related to accountability. Many people probably saw this in the news, it is public, that there was another lawsuit against TEA that prevented TEA from releasing traditional accountability results for a second year in a row. So the superintendent's point about we have verified data means something technically, and we'll get to that a bit later, but we don't have the traditional release of letter grades from the state, but we're able to validate those and share those with you and the community based on what we have. That lawsuit will go through the judicial process. We obviously don't know where that will land. It does not, however, stop us from understanding our data or pursuing paths forward in the classroom with our fellow educators, and that's really the focus of our time here tonight. We also want to call out that part of what's behind these lawsuits, not only the reason, but part of the reason is changes to the accountability system that are making it more rigorous and raising expectations. We are also pursuing raised expectations in La Jolla ISD, so that's something we're going to do no matter what happens with the accountability system, but that is something for us to keep in mind as we move into the upcoming years, as those expectations on specific tests change and as expectations on the accountability system as a whole change, it does become more difficult to maintain the same level of performance. So we've got to accelerate what we're doing not only to improve, but also just to keep up. And this data will help guide that conversation as well. So Ms. Flores is actually going to come talk us through the next part, then Mr. Duque, and then I'll be back to wrap us up.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Good evening. Although, as Dr. Little just mentioned, although we are under that gag order with the ratings or from being officially rated, we still have that due diligence of making sure that we are making informed decisions with what our data sets are telling us about our growth and our performance. And so we have two areas. We are presenting preliminary data, as we do not have the official data. However, we still have to utilize the data sources that we have available to us, because that is what needs to lead to actionable items, such as the type of curriculum that our students need to be receiving, the staff development and professional development that's going to lead to the changes in those instructional strategies in our classrooms to make sure that we have students meeting the outcomes for their academic achievement. And so you will be seeing preliminary data in the presentations and the slides coming forward. The accountability subset is something we're looking forward to presenting to the board as well as to our community, because that will bring in the snapshot data. Again, we value all of our students that test across our district, and therefore, when we're making those decisions, we value all students' performance. And so that's what you're going to see in tonight's presentation. So we have highlights in the performance. We had a lot of people working very hard. We are very honored of all the support that our parents provide to us as an entity, as an institution in our district. We have very hardworking teachers and leaders that have gotten us to the presentation and the data you're receiving tonight. But we still have a lot of significant work ahead of us, because as the data is informing us, we are not meeting or getting to that meets level that we need to be. As a matter of fact, you're going to see that currently we have one area, and that is the 8th grade math, that has gotten us to that 60% of our students meeting. Why is this important? We all aspire to be an A-rated district. So typically we use that formula of 90% of our students at approaches, 60% of our students at the meets level, and 30% at the masters. That's the formula for that A. And so currently, when we look at our data, while the pandemic was going to have a slide, La Jolla is proving that this group of students are able to attain that data set. And so following best practices, we're confident that the rest of our contents will follow. So I'm going to share with you some highlights that we have in the area of reading. You're going to see in the slides that we did show growth in the areas more than in the region and state with the 2-year comparison that we did with our own data. And specifically in the area of elementary reading, you're going to see the achievements that were reached in that area. In the area of mathematics performance, you're going to see the growth that we had in math. However, you're going to see that the significant amount was more in 7th, 8th, and in Algebra 1. And again, data leads to decisions on our curriculum and the instructional strategies we need to make, and you're going to see what the data told us about certain decisions that had to be made in these levels. In the area of science, you're also going to see, again, the comparison that we did with our data, and that is that we had gains in the area. We're not where we need to be, but we're on the right track to closing those gaps. And you're going to see how we're leading the region and the state in the area of 8th grade. As far as with social studies, La Jolla is the only one that showed the gains in social studies compared to the region and the state. And you're going to see the highlight, and we commend our 8th grade social studies for getting us to those levels. And again, the hard work, preparation, and everything that's done, because when we have students receiving high quality instruction, you will see the results. And it paves the path of where we need to be. So speaking of that path, we are provided our accountability ratings, and that goes across domains 1 through 3. And we have performance level descriptors that identify and define the level of students' learning by grade. What you see in the slide in front of you, this is just an example of a scale score conversion chart that we have for the 5th grade English exam. And you see that the students, based on that raw score attained when they take these assessments, are either in a category of they did not meet, they reached that approaches, that meets, and masters. And so this data set in that example there just shows you the student achievement side that's also brought in the federal target area. However, our state also gives us and provides us the opportunity and gives us the points that are necessary by growing our children. And so on the growth side, you see the does not meet low category performance level, the does not meet high, the approaches low, approaches high, the meets and masters. As a former classroom teacher, as many of us in this room and in our audience and the classroom teachers we have, one of the things that we always want for all of our children is for them to achieve mastery. What we're teaching is something that should be internalized and learned, and we want our students to be able to leave our classrooms, exit our classrooms, by being problem solvers, critical thinkers, and able to carry that information on. And so that's exactly what these performance level descriptors are about, making sure that the student is able to have that knowledge and perform well in that next level. We want them to have that sense of confidence in achievement and in growth so that when we start a grade level, we're able to move to the next grade level and we're confident. We do have students at different levels. And so the analysis, the decisions that are made are wanting our students to be at the meets level and above. We owe it to our community to make sure that the students are learning at their grade level. So when you see a student who is not meeting their grade level, that's a student that's very unlikely to succeed without significant intervention being brought in. At the next level of approaches, you are barely approaching that grade level. And so we have to make sure that we are providing those targeted interventions and that accelerated instruction that's needed so that the students are receiving the proper grade level performance interventions. Any students that are at the meets grade level, these students have that high likelihood of making sure that they're successful in the next grade. And they're exiting, they're taking these exams at the end of the year, and they're, again, it's just a performance level of what they have been taught. And so that cognition skill, we want it to be at the highest level. And even though they're at meeting that grade level, these students are still needing short-term targeted academic interventions, and it's our obligation to make sure that our curriculum is where it needs to be to provide these opportunities to get our students to that master's grade level. When students are at that grade level, then they're expected to succeed in the next grade level with little or no academic intervention. So whether that's from one grade to the next, or if it's leading to post-secondary readiness, whether it's a career, college, military, we have that due diligence of making sure that we're preparing our students to be active participants and, again, critical thinkers and problem solvers. So we're going to go next into the data, and Mr. Duque is going over that information.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Flores, for setting the stage for our data review. As we look at our data, we developed a system that's going to allow a visual of our data for our board members and our community. In this visual, the deeper the color, the better the progression, or the worse the regression, right? So as you look at the data table in front of you, you'll see that at LJISD, we compared ourselves to how we performed in 2023. So in these data tables that look like this, you're looking at how we compared to ourselves. We're looking at how the state performed as well. We're looking at how the region performed. But in this data table, we're looking at how we improved or we regressed as a district. One of the things that I'd like to point to you is that we also isolated our assessments by grade level, by subject, and by language. So anywhere that you see a letter E, that test was administered in English. An S, that test was administered in Spanish. As you can see, as a district, we showed progress in many areas of our RLA assessments. We also showed regression in some of our RLA assessments. And so just like we're improving in some areas, we need to make sure that we act on the areas that we're not improving and that we're regressing as a district. And it's important that we recognize that both exist. And they exist in our classrooms, and we have to address those needs. The other highlight of this that I wanted to point to you, and there's two different highlights that I wanted you all to understand here, is that this is a comparison of how we're growing as a district, not necessarily how we're performing. Because in our next slide, you will see that even though we have an 8 percentage point increase in English 2, we still are not competitive when we compare ourselves to the region and state. You'll also note that we have a 13-point regression in third grade RLA in Spanish. Okay, that is a big call to action for our third grade classrooms that are going to be assessed in Spanish. You also need to know as a board that out of Region 1, which extends from Brownsville to Laredo, La Jolla ISD represents, on average, per grade level, between 22 and 26% of the Spanish testers in the region. And just to give you all an idea of what that means, there is 38 districts in that span between Brownsville and Laredo, and La Jolla ISD represents that range of percentage per grade level Spanish testers. You should also know that Spanish testers are only allowed in elementary 3 through 5th grade STAR assessments. Once students transition into secondary schools, they are only assessed in Spanish. I'm sorry, in English, my bad. In this next slide, this is how we compare versus the region and state in performance. So it's not how we're growing, it's how we are performing against the region and state. I'd like for you to call your attention to the graph. The red column represents La Jolla ISD performance. The black dot represents Region 1, and the blue dot represents the state of Texas. As you can see, we remain very strongly competitive in elementary RLA performance. As we transition into our secondary schools, our performance takes a dip across all grade levels all the way through end of course, English 1 and 2. Again, we as a district test very heavily, about 25% of our kids, or 22 to 26% of our kids, in Spanish in elementary, and in secondary schools, this assessment is only provided in English. However, I want us to note that as a district, based on the previous slide, we are closing the gap in the performance between the region and the state. So we are trending in the correct direction. It's now how fast can we move the needle to close that gap between the performance for our region and our state. I also want to bring your attention to the third grade RLA bubble. This is a really neat graphic, and I really enjoy it a lot. Our students in third grade RLA Spanish are performing at 23% at the meets level, which still leaves 77% of our Spanish testing third graders that are not performing on grade level. Again, a call to action for what are we going to do in those classrooms to improve instruction and make sure that our kids, by the time that they are assessed by the state, are performing on grade level. As we move to mathematics, you'll note that we have the same heat map with regard to the color scheme that we developed. Again, you're looking for colors that are predominantly in the white, light green to dark green. As you can see just from the visual, as a district, we have quite a few dark green colors. That means that we are trending in the right direction. That doesn't mean that we don't have areas of improvement that can be improved upon. Particularly, we're looking at third grade math, where we see that we regressed by 7 percentage points. Again, a call to action for those classrooms where we can improve. We also want to note that in 8th grade math, at the meets level, the only subject that is outperforming above the 60%, we did see an 8 percentage point increase from 2023 to 2024 performance. Again, we're moving in the right direction in that grade level and that content. We also want you to note, there's a few notes at the bottom. We want you to note that for grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, we have accelerated testers. These are students that typically would be enrolled in a 6th grade classroom, but would be assessed with a 7th grade math test, or a 7th grade classroom with an 8th grade math test. We do have approximately 268 students that in 2024 did attempt a Algebra 1 end of course assessment in 8th grade, and I believe 99% of them did meet that graduation requirement for that Algebra 1 end of course assessment. So that's something that we can celebrate as a district. So a lot of our 8th graders are prepared for graduation. As we move into our table where we compare our performance, I want you to note that in RLA, we were not only leading and being very competitive against the region and state in our elementaries, but now the tide has shifted. Here, you'll note that we are in some areas right behind the pack, and in some areas we are dragging consistently below the region and state. However, I'd like for you to note that in grade 7th and 8th grade math and Algebra 1, we are not only leading the pack, but in some areas we're significantly outperforming the region and state, which is again, highlight to our students and their strong academic preparation in the classroom for mathematics. Reviewing our science performance, again, as a district, we did slide big amount in 5th grade science in English. However, I'd like for the board to note that while we regressed -7 percentage points, both the region and state regressed slightly more than La Jolla ISD at -8% both. Looking at the rest of the table, you can see how we remain steady in our 5th grade science Spanish, our 8th grade science, and we actually saw an improvement of 5 percentage points in biology. What does that tell us when we see a -2 and a 0% for the region and state respectively? That means that we're closing the gap with the region and state as we trend in the right direction of moving our students to be very competitive with the region and state. As we look at the data table, again, we may be below the region and state in 5th grade science and English. However, we're not too far off from the pack, stating that we can close this gap, again, with targeted interventions in the classroom. In grade 5 science and Spanish, you can see how the region is slightly above the district, but the district is outpacing the state. In both grade 8 science and biology, in grade 8 science, we are outpacing both the region and state, and we're closing the gap with the region and state in biology. Just a friendly reminder that all of these percentages are represented at the meets level performance, which is grade level expectations. Lastly, our heat map for social studies shows that La Jolla ISD was the only of the 3 institutions to increase their performance at the social studies level from previous year to current year. So we saw a 4 percentage point increase in 8th grade social studies and a 1% increase in U.S. history. Now, you should note also that this is the first time where students are assessed with social studies since they begin school with us. So the state does not provide an elementary social studies assessment, and the first time they are provided a social studies assessment is in 8th grade. Again, we are growing, we are improving our instructional practices, and we are closing the gaps. So in 8th grade social studies, I want us to note that we are performing above the region, and we're right on par with the state, which is really good for our 8th grade social studies, so kudos to the 8th grade social studies teachers. In U.S. history, we're going to be very honest and upfront. There is a lot of work to be done for us to get our students to a grade level, but we are trending in the right direction with that increase of 1 percentage point while everybody else decreased or remained neutral. Therefore, I can see us trying to close the gap, maybe not in a year, but over the next few years, we are going to be working at closing the gaps. The next slide is, I think, a testament to all the work that our district, our teachers, our staff, everyone at the campuses, everyone at central office worked really hard last school year, and it should be recognized. So there is 2 ways to present data and accountability ratings. The first way is by providing our school board with a final rating. Because of pending legal activities and a temporary restraining order against our accountability system, we are not able to receive final ratings from the state of Texas and the Texas Education Agency. However, they allowed us to submit our projections for our ratings. So typically what happens is we get our data, and in my office and in conjunction with a few other offices, we work on what we call preliminary projections. Those preliminary projections we were allowed to submit to the Texas Education Agency, and they verified our ratings. They verified that each one of our campus ratings, we were correct in our preliminary projections. So we did a very good job of projecting our ratings. However, the new methodology does not allow for a district to be rated as a very big high school. Rather, we are just a proportion of each one of our high schools' percentage weight when you take enrollment of each high school and you divide it by the total enrollment of the district. So we add up all those points, and then we submit that rating to TEA. And I'm pleased to announce, and I'm proud to announce that La Jolla ISD has verified a B rating for the 23-24 school year with a scale score of an 84, which is an improvement of our projected rating in 2023 of an 82. So in essence, I want to make sure that we understand that the system got harder, the assessment is getting harder as we move forward over the next few years, and however, even that could not stop us from progressing. So as a district, we've improved and we've moved the needle in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Duque. Before you leave, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Duque?
I have a question. Forgive me if I'm a little stuffy. If I need to repeat, let me know. So looking at these the graphs with the red bars, that's, as you said, is only for students that are meets and above, correct?
That is correct.
So then if I inverse that, then I'm showing then the students that are do not meet or approaches, meaning that in reading, I have about maybe 40% of students throughout these grade levels not, meeting. And then in math, we have about 50% or more also students not meeting, not at meets, basically, below that.
So we only projected meets level data.
Right.
Okay, so when we look at the percentage of students that did not achieve meets, that is the percentage of students that we are saying are not on grade level expectations, because meets performance is on grade level expectation. That doesn't necessarily mean that they did not meet approaches grade level. They just did not reach the meets level, which if we go back to this slide right here, anything in blue is meets level performance. However, the state gives us credit for getting students to the approaches grade level because, as this slide dictates, they are approaching the next level, which is the meets level performance.
You're right. So if you go to the slide where you have the math chart, one more, that
go.
one, if I look at 5th grade math English, the red bars representing, like you said, meets and above, but then that space over is showing 55% of students are then below that. More or
So
less.
it's about right,
correct,
yes.
Anita.
So
Right.
55% of our 5th grade math students are not on grade level when it
That
comes
is
to
correct,
math.
Anita.
Okay.
That's right.
Just want to clarify that, just for us, but then also for people also to see that we have good going, and then we have some what we need to.
Yes, and so thank you for clarifying. No. Clarifying the obvious, right? Which may not also be obvious. Right. And so the reason that we did the presentation from a meets perspective is because as we set goals as a district, we want to set goals at meets and above, because we want our students in La Jolla ISD to be at meets grade level or above. That should be our expectation across the district. Educational excellence is the right of every student, and that starts with every student being at grade level or above. And that's going to take us work to get there. And so, Dr. Little, it's a nice transition to how we're doing the work to get there. But thank you for asking that question, because the reason why we set up the presentation in the way that we did is so that we're starting our conversations with meets at above, knowing that we have a large percentage of our students who are not yet And the opportune word is yet, because we will get there, because our teachers are working so hard and our principals are working so hard, and we believe in the brilliance of our young people, and we know that we're doing the right things to set us on a path moving forward, that we know that we are going to achieve that meets or above. But the reason that we did set up the presentation with the meets benchmark is because that's the conversation that we want to have moving forward, knowing that we do have a preponderance of students who are still at approaches and does not meet. And so, again, thank you for asking that really pointed question, knowing that we have work to do moving forward. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Sorensen. To sort of close out our conversation here, we want to reflect on this question. To Mr. Duque's point and to what the superintendent just said, there's so much appreciation and gratitude for the incredible work that the team across the district and with our parents and community got accomplished last year. We also have to confront what comes next in our pursuit of educational excellence, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about before we close this topic out. The first is to say we have to have a clear strategy and way of working as we think about raising the level of achievement and outcomes for our students. So if we want to get to the majority of our students on grade level, what's it going to take? We introduced this year a strategy for our leaders and teachers that you see on the left, which is rooted in 4 key things. At the center of that is a real focus on instructional leadership. This is guiding our work day in and day out with principals and assistant principals to ensure that they're able to provide the instructional leadership needed to improve what's happening in our classrooms every day. The 3 things that tie tightly around that is obviously a focus on instruction. It's also priority 3 for our district, high quality instruction. So making sure that we have the right materials, the right practices, which lead to the best outcomes. Collaboration is a key part of that. How are we helping our teachers work together to improve their own practice? That is work that we are creating with systems at each campus level, but also thinking about cross-campus collaboration with our leaders to get to the other part here, which is consistent improvement. Knowing where we are at any given point in our journey and understanding what it's going to take to make that even stronger and better. Part of this, and this is sort of the more wonky academic part of it, is we have an instructional framework which we have clarified for our classrooms and teachers this year. This is part of how we implement that instruction part of our strategy. It really focuses on how teachers are spending their time getting ready to be in the classroom with students, delivering and facilitating the best lessons, understanding where those students are in mastering that content, and knowing how to respond and adjust based on where students end up. So that is a cycle that we go through sort of day in and day out, week in and week out through the process. The other parts, sort of the more narrow parts of this instructional framework as we get closer to the center, are really thinking about the outcomes we want for our students that are more global and holistic. How do we ensure we are preparing problem solvers, critical thinkers, people who can communicate and collaborate with one another, not only in the classroom but outside of that? So the way in which we're approaching instruction, you'll also hear me in just a second talk about resources that we put in place for this year, is really striving and pushing for that type of approach in thinking and development. And so all of that may sound great in concept, but what does it mean in practice every day for a teacher? And that's what the example of the lesson structure looks like. Making sure that we have clear tools and resources that people can use to actually get ready to do the work. So a lesson structure is a guide that teachers use as they're preparing for class. So if I'm sitting here Wednesday in my planning period thinking about what's going to happen next week or the week after, this is prompting me to ask questions. Do I actually know what I need to achieve with students in this lesson? How am I going to engage them and include them in that learning process? And what am I going to do to respond if I see students knocking it out of the park and we need to accelerate and go faster? Or if that's an area for us to slow down and make sure that we are really covering that content and students are learning it well. So we're providing these very tangible, concrete tools as we're thinking about this broad strategy as well. And examples of the things that we are inputting into the classroom. So to start to use some Lone Star governance terminology here. So we just saw outcomes for last school year. That now leads us to say, what are the inputs we are going to use for this school year to drive those outcomes even further and faster? We've broken this down sort of by content area or area of focus, and this is based directly on the data that we just saw. We have to look at that data and again celebrate the areas of growth and progress. We also have to look at that data and say, what do we need to do to make this even better for our students? In literacy, we provided a really great resource for teachers to use for both on grade level support and instruction, as well as to help students who might be below grade level to close those gaps and catch up. That's our Lexia resource. That is a computer-based sort of program that students are using, both with their teacher in the classroom, as well as additional time in the day, based on that student's schedule. For math, we saw this data clearly. We had a lot of work to do in the elementary level, and we know that we need to accelerate in the middle school. That drove part of the decision around high-quality instructional materials for mathematics. So introducing Eureka in K-5 and Carnegie in K-6, with a similar concept of what we have in literacy with Lexia, that comes in the math form of Zern, elementary, and Mathia for the middle school students. The other thing to note here is we haven't adopted a new HQIM or high quality instructional material for literacy just yet. We are going to talk about that throughout this school year because next year we will have a new adoption. We started with math partly because of that data, because you saw that it needed the most work. We had so much room to grow in the math area. And the choice that the district made is based on evidence and research for the high quality instructional materials. The state, TEA, did significant work over a long period of time to really scour the best resources across the country and make sure that those were available for Texas students, covering Texas standards, so that this was appropriate for La Jolla and everywhere else in the state of Texas. Eureka and Carnegie sort of excel in all of those reviews. So as we think about educational excellence, we also think about how do we provide the most excellent resources and supports in the classroom, and we've certainly done that with this portfolio that you see here. Similar in science, we have a new HQIM adoption with SAVA, so working to make sure that we're providing really great science instruction. But I mentioned on the previous slide, how do we create problem solvers, critical thinkers, people who have sort of an inquiry approach to life and their work? The way this curriculum and these materials in math and science and in pre-K our focus is through that lens. Not just, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm going to tell you things, you need to know it. How do you explore and discover on your own in line with the expectations for that grade level? So pre-K, we have that creative curriculum this year. We've also talked a lot about our two-way dual language implementation. You'll hear a little bit more about that 2 presentations from now. And then as we think about the improvement part of our strategy, I'll give a quick presentation in a second on MAP, but making sure we've got the best view of where our students are in their learning journey and what we need to do to accelerate that growth and achievement, and MAP will do that with us and for us. And then I mentioned collaboration, like really strengthening the work that teachers are doing together at their campus in professional learning communities, and building stronger shared decision-making structures with instructional leadership teams. So it's the principal and the leadership, but there's also classroom-based participation there. So as we think about our work moving forward, as we think about becoming an A district in La Jolla, these are key pieces of what we are working on with our educators to make sure that we are accelerating the pathway to those outcomes. And that wraps us up for this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Does anyone have any questions for any of those that presented?
I do.
Yes.
I had a question. I'm a parent as well, so I've seen the material that you're giving.
Let me interrupt you.
Can you hear me?
Board member, can you put it a little closer to you? Great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. No, I was saying I'm a parent as well, so I've noticed the changes in the material, and I appreciate it. It's different means to conceptualize the data that they're giving. However, are there resources for parents? It is a different way to look and to learn. So are we providing those resources for parents? It is a big change.
First, thank you for seeing that sort of adjustment in your own child's experience. That's exciting that that's sort of happening in your home and in many others across the community. And to answer your question, yes, we are actually so close to releasing a set of supports for families that will continue throughout the school year. So, by grade level, what should you be seeing and hearing in your child's work in literacy or in math or in science, and what are things that you can talk to your child about at home to help them accelerate those learning. So those are coming out. We'll have a website, you'll get text message reminders, we'll have emails, we'll have some print materials to go home with the students in the backpack. But yes, we want to build as strong of a partnership as possible with our parents as we pursue this work.
Appreciate it.
Board Member Ochoa, that was an excellent question. Excellent question. Do we have any other questions from the board?
Yes, Dr. Ler, can you tell the community a little bit more about the process and who was involved in picking out this new curriculum?
I can certainly try, and the superintendent may have to help with some of this. Districts have a process that they go through where they review available materials as the state requires new adoptions. In some of these cases, there's a required new adoption like RLA that I mentioned for reading, for example. That adoption process is part of what's pushing us to think about a new curriculum for next year, but it's not the only reason. We've obviously got to make the best decisions for our students, and that leads us to that. There's generally like showcases. Here are the options that we're pursuing. Teachers have a voice and chance to weigh in. Those are available to the public as well, so you can come sort of see and feel in some cases what the options are. And then the district reviews that data, reviews the research, also looks heavily in this case, what is the state recommending as the best resources available, and then makes a recommendation to the board to pursue that. The other thing to note here is not only are, for Eureka and Carnegie, for example, they the best-in-class resources, there are also resources that are available to districts at low cost in the initial year, so that is helpful, not the determining factor, but it's helpful to know that there are grant dollars associated to help with the implementation of this work as well.
Thank you.
Any other members?
I was just going to point out, thank you for pointing out that teachers are involved in this decision, because I think sometimes we forget that they're the ones that are in front of our students and are helping make these decisions. So thank you.
Good comment, Secretary Pena. You know, I know that when we bring or introduce something new to a district, there's growing pains. I appreciate the presentation that Dr. Little, you, Ms. Flores, and Mr. Duque that you presented to us, so thank you for that. And like everyone here, we're very grateful that you're having those conversations, not only with the teachers, but also with the community and other members. And so thank you for all the work. Mr. Duque, I appreciate the fact that you said we still have work to be done that needs to be done. I mean, we're very transparent here. And I've heard Dr. Sorensen multiple times say that that's what we're going to pride ourselves on, is transparency. So I appreciate the comment that you made, but I also appreciate that we're also trending in the right direction. So thank you for that. That's encouraging. So thank you for that and the great presentation that you all just presented to us. Dr. Sorensen, would you like to add anything else?
Yes, I do want to always take pause and really acknowledge the hard work that takes place every day in the classrooms, every day on campuses. You don't get to a rock solid B without acknowledging the hard work that our teachers and that our campus leaders and all of the instructional assistants put in to support our students to get there, right? We also don't get to a rock solid B without the support of our parents, right? This district has worked really hard to get to the place that we're at. And I don't want to acknowledge that that doesn't exist. It does, right? There are districts all over the state that struggle to get to an 84. That is the truth. And so that takes a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and long hours, and hard decisions, and people really giving their all, and a lot of love, and a lot of work. And if we're going to get to that A, we're going to ask you guys to continue to do that. Because as we all have committed to here in La Jolla, we love our children. We're all here to do the right work for our children. And as the data has been very clear and very transparent, we're not there yet. We don't have enough of our children at meets or masters. And that puts our children on a trajectory that doesn't take them to spaces and places where their earning potential, their career potential, and their best life potential can be realized at the highest level. So all of our job is to realize that we have work ahead of us while we celebrate the work that's been done and acknowledge and gratitude is here for all of the work that's been done prior to us leading us to this next phase. We are going to continue to lean into the next phase because we owe it to the children of this community, and we're here to support our educators every single day as you lean into the instructional shifts that we're asking you to make on behalf of our students as we do that together. So thank you for the work that you're about to do, the work that you will continue to do as we do it together.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Our next item on the agenda, under agenda item 5, is 5.2, discussion of the 2024-2025 NWEA MAP District Assessment System. Again, Dr. Little, you may proceed.
Thank you. So just want to give a high-level overview of what is MAP. You hear us talk about this. It is a key part of our strategy and effort this year. So just want to lay out what this resource is and how we're going to use it. The first thing to know about MAP is it is a computer adaptive assessment. So there's two parts of that I want to sort of call out. The computer part, a little bit self-explanatory, but this means students are engaging with it on a device. It's not a paper pencil sort of exercise. The adaptive piece means that it's actually adjusting to where the student is in their learning journey. And I want to show sort of what that looks and feels like to mean that it is an adaptive assessment. So let's take this little third grader who's starting to take the MAP assessment, and we see her get the first question. There's a green check mark there, which means she got that question right. So what MAP wants to do is want to really find her boundary of learning. So how much can we push her to see all the things that she knows and can do at this point? So the second question is much harder. You see that much higher on the difficulty scale here, and she gets that question wrong. And so it adjusts down a little bit with a slightly easier question, which she gets right, and we continue on this process until we level out and are really confident that this is what's called the zone approximate development. So we have found the area for this little third grade student where she is ready to learn the next thing. We know all the things she knows up until that point, and she's ready for the next thing. You see a number of red X's on here, and this is one of the hardest things for classroom teachers in particular to adjust when we start MAP work, is that it's actually designed to get half of the questions wrong. Because this is not an assessment where I want to get 100%. It's an assessment where I want to know the extent of what you currently know so that as a teacher, I'm ready to meet you where you are and help you get to the next level. So sometimes folks sort of get really nervous. Oh my gosh, they missed half of the questions. Yes, that means it's working right, and we found the zone of proximal development for that student. MAP is been around for quite some time. It is highly reliable and valid. Those are terms that mean a lot to sort of test makers and folks who think about assessment. But MAP not only helps us find the zone of proximal development, it helps predict and indicate where that student will land on achievement. So this is not something that is totally separate from our work as we think about the last presentation with STAR and EOC data. It actually informs how close we're getting to that grade level achievement or higher based on where we are when we take this assessment at the beginning or middle of the year. The other thing, which we'll see in a bit, is it really helps us track growth over time. And the beautiful thing about this is we're starting this year, so we may have a first grader who's participating in MAP for the first time in a couple of weeks. And 5 years later, we're going to get to see where they are in 6th grade. And we will see that entire learning journey over time and really understand how we continue to help that student. I mentioned that it talks about achievement and growth. You will probably see this slide every time we talk about MAP because it's one of the most important things for us to keep reiterating. And it even connects back to the presentation on STAR and those achievement levels. Growth is expected from coming to school. Like we all generally and casually think that I'm going to come to 4th grade and I'm going to learn 1 year's worth of stuff so that I'm ready for 5th grade. But if I don't learn that 1 year of work, then I'm not quite ready, right? And that's part of what we talked about last year with approaches versus meets. But we've got to accelerate growth so we actually increase achievement. So learning just 1 year's worth of concepts and content isn't enough to close opportunity and achievement gaps. We've got to grow faster than that to actually get our students further on the achievement curve. So as we talk about MAP data in the future, we're going to talk a lot about this because we want to see that students are exceeding their growth targets. Because only by exceeding their growth targets are we actually improving their achievement. We're learning more than what we need to just keep up. We're learning enough to actually improve. The other thing we've got to watch out for, though, is students who are not meeting their growth targets, because then they're falling backwards. Their achievement is actually going in the wrong direction if we're not maintaining that level of learning to at least keep up. I mentioned that this helps us on our journey to actual understanding, grade level achievement when we think about STAR and EOC. This shows you really from second grade all the way through high school, there is a deep relationship and connection between the MAP data and information that we will get and what we're actually seeing in STAR and in, of course, assessments. The other thing to note here, and we get this question sometimes for teachers, well, STAR changed the question types. How are we going to make sure that students are ready for those? Well, MAP has built in many of those question types as well. So students are getting practice on the assessment type, but more importantly, we always want to understand, do they actually know the content and concepts? And that's really what we're focused on from an instructional standpoint. Part of what we will talk a lot about with MAP as well is what is it telling us is our likely achievement at the end of the year when we take the STAR or EOC exam. MAP has done a tremendous amount of work with incredibly smart statisticians to build these linking studies or correlation tables. So we will be able to say, okay, how did a third grader do in September on the beginning of year assessment, and what achievement level does that indicate they will likely be in April when they take the STAR exam? And you see here that plots out to does that meet approaches, meets, or masters. So that really informs student by student, classroom by classroom, for us here at the district level, the support we have to provide to accelerate the growth for that student so that they don't stay in that bucket, but we actually get them closer to grade level achievement. I just sort of mentioned that this is really useful not only as an assessment, but really as an instructional tool. We really hope our classroom educators and our principals don't just see this as something they do 3 times a year, but see this as something that they use every day to guide the support and services for their students. We know that it is related to the standards, so I want to reiterate that again. This is covering the Texas standards. It covers the TEKS. It also informs whether students have mastered that TEK or not and need additional help. And part of what it does for teachers, you're not meant to actually know what's in the little clips. It's just a visual to show sort of what's there. But you see those green and red things. It tells the teacher exactly what the student knows and what they don't. So I'm able, when I'm pulling small groups or I'm using Zern or Lexia or whatever it may be, to focus on the right things, student by student. There are also suggested intervention lessons built into MAP that can help a teacher guide, hey, I need to work with these 4 students on this concept because they're all, again, in the same zone of proximal development that I need to address. Part of what we're going to be able to do across the district is look at this data in really interesting and informative ways. So we will, yes, keep coming back to you with future data reports on how we're doing with students across the grade levels, but schools and teachers will look at that at the school and classroom level as well. And then on the far right of this screen, you actually see a student profile. I personally think this is one of the most powerful things that MAP has. I mentioned earlier, we got a first grader this year, and 5 years from now, we're going to see their journey in 6th grade. It will plot every time they took this assessment, and we will see how well across that span we actually did with that student in promoting grade level achievement and growth. So I'm super excited about the power of this to inform what we're doing. And then back to the question about how are we going to help and inform families, there are built-in family reports. So we'll be able to send those home, talk to parents about here's where your student is with achievement, here's where they are with growth, and what are we doing to help accelerate both of those. So high-level overview, just to give folks a sense of what this is, why we're excited about it, and how it fits. And obviously, we'll come back when we have data to share that as well.
And Dr. Little, when does the assessment window open so that our families are aware when MAP assessment begins across the district?
Yeah, for beginning of year, we have a 2-week window, so it will open on September 9th. So not next week, but the week after, and it'll run for 2 weeks. So I think it's the 9th to the 20th, if I'm remembering correctly. That's also to give our campuses time. It's the first time they're doing this, so we wanted to build in enough time for them to work through any hiccups that they may have. But this is a moment, to your point, Dr. Sorensen. Like, one, we need students to show up. Like, don't miss school on those days. Because this is not about, hey, this is high stakes. It's about how do we help you get better. And if you aren't participating, then we don't know all of those things that the teacher needs to know about where you are in your learning journey.
And the other question I would ask is, in campuses, if you have problems with implementation, who do you call for assistance?
Yeah, so Mr. Duque, who is just up here, he and his team have done a tremendous amount of work to provide training to campuses, including teachers so that they know what this is, as well as our sort of administrative staff on campuses. We have an assessment manual that we're providing so folks know how to go through the different steps of administering this. And we have effectively like a command center idea for this as well. So you can directly sort of log on during those assessment periods if you have a question and get support.
Thank you, Dr. Little. And thank you, Mr. Duque, in advance for the command center and all the support that you're going to provide our teachers and our campuses. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I do any board members have anything before I say?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
Would this program replace any benchmark exams, or is, yeah, I guess.
I love that question, man. The superintendent does too.
I do.
Yes. We actually have very intentionally, and again, Mr. Duque and his team have done a lot of work here as well, like scrubbed the number of assessments that we gave. So as we looked at the work last year, the district frankly spent a lot of time assessing children. And so we really wanted to create more space for instruction and learning, but not remove the key information that teachers and leaders need to know where their students are. So yes, this does replace a number of assessments along the way. And what we have really emphasized is outside of MAP, what teachers should be doing is what's built into the curriculum. So yes, there are like 3-week assessment modules or 6-week assessment modules, but those provide the sufficient data we need. The rest of the time is about instruction and learning.
Great question. Great question, Secretary.
And I know you mentioned 3 times a year. Is that how often? But you also mentioned daily, right, that you want them to use it. So give us a little bit of clarification on.
Yeah, sorry I wasn't clear about that. So the MAP assessment itself will occur 3 times a year. At the beginning of the year, again, starting on September 9th, we'll do it at the middle of year as well, and then we will do it at the end of the year. Sometimes people ask, why do you do this at the end of the year when you have STAR and other things? But let me go back to that 1st through 6th grade journey. It's really important for us to know where the student ended, like with this continuum of data, because that informs first day what the teacher needs to know about me when I show up as a 2nd grader, 3rd grader, 4th grader, whatever that may be. Dr. Sorensen, did you have something a minute ago?
I was just going to add, though, and I appreciate your question because it really goes to a lot of the feedback that we heard from our teachers across the district and from our principals across the district, not only about how much we were assessing and all the various ways that we were assessing, whether that was through various platforms or through district-created assessments or through campus-created assessments and what was mandated and how many data reports teachers had to create and how much time teachers had to spend creating plans and reteaching plans and responding to data and assessing and assessing and assessing, and how it was really pulling time away from instruction. And so Mr. Duque's team and really listened to the feedback that I kind of brought him back from the field and created a really streamlined assessment calendar for the district The curriculum team, and under the leadership of Mr. Munoz, really just leaned into how do we streamline, really lean into instruction and use the curriculum as it's designed to be used. And so we feel like we have a really balanced assessment system and a really streamlined curriculum support system with assessments built into it to really support our teachers to do what they do best, which is support with instruction with a balanced assessment system. So I appreciate the question.
And Board Member Pena, one thing your question made me think of as well, for families to know, this is not something that takes hours upon hours or days upon days. Like generally you will do the reading version in about a class period, so about 45 minutes. You will do the math version also in about 45 minutes. So this isn't something that's going to eat away a lot of time. You know, generally it's one class period and then we're back to instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Little, Ms. Flores, or Mr. Duque?
I have a question about more like technicalities for, let's say your second graders. I'm thinking there's going to be like a guide or something when the kids are going to start taking the test, but more like I saw that there was like a drag and drop or select all that apply. I don't know if how would the kids get assimilated to the testing, or are they going to have assistance available during so that we can make sure it's based on knowledge and not on a technicality issue?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that question because it does also come up quite a bit. So a couple things to note there. There are opportunities before you start the assessment itself to practice some of those features. So there's like little tutorials that you can go through on, hey, let's practice this. The other thing I would say, and again, I now have fifth graders, but I had first and second graders who were doing math. They're actually much more proficient at these things than we often give them credit for. So like their ability to navigate a new system is much easier than typically ours as adults. But there are built-in features to help support with that. The other thing to know at the lower grade levels, at second grade in particular and like first, is students will actually have headsets and microphones because there are fluency parts that they are doing and they're needing to speak into the assessment to understand, but they're also needing to listen to things. So that starts to change when we get into third grade, but that also helps make sure that it's developmentally appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Any further questions? Thank you very much. That'll bring us to agenda item 5.3, and I know you'll be joined by Ms. Jamie Miller. Will she be joining you? Okay. 5.3 is the discussion on the beginning of the beginning of year staff leveling. Ms. Miller, Dr. Little?
So I have the good pleasure of actually going through the presentation with you again, so 3 times the charm tonight. But my friend and colleague, Chief Miller, is certainly here to provide reinforcement and support. We told you last board meeting some things that were coming up at the start of the school year, which included our leveling process, understanding enrollment. So as promised, we wanted to circle back tonight and tell you sort of where that's landed and what it's meaning for the organization. Just to quickly recap on some reasons why we do this. We shared some of this last time, but want to make sure you and the community have a chance to think on this again. The first and foremost reason why we think about leveling where staffing is because that best ensures we're meeting our students' needs. We do not want to have a classroom without a teacher in it. We also don't want to have a classroom with a teacher and no students, right? That's just not a right match of the resources. So the leveling process brings those together to make sure we put our teachers and staff in the right place based on where students actually showed up. That obviously helps make sure that we are operationally efficient and fiscally efficient, but it's really about ensuring our students are matched with educators for the rest of the year so that we have great stability and great instruction to the past 2 presentations. We want to be super supportive through the process. So we want families to understand what's happening and we communicate clearly with them if they're going to have a teacher change. And we want to support our staff who may have a change in location or assignment as well so that they feel good about what they are going into for the rest of the year. We have done this with a very focused, systemic approach and process. It all began with making sure we had clarity on our enrollment numbers. So for the first 10 days of school, principals every day had to submit their enrollment counts, and that gave us clarity on how many students actually showed up. Is enrollment changing or improving over time? And then let us understand, based on rerunning staffing, where we need to make those adjustments. We talked through that with principals. We have also spent time with ATPE and AFT in this process before we went through it. We actually did an in-person session and gave this exact same presentation with AFT last week, I think it was, and have stayed in close communication with our partners and our principals as well. So everyone understands why this is happening, what's happening, and how it's going to work. And now we're at the point, you'll see this in a second, where we're supporting our team through this realignment. We want to take the next 2 slides to answer 2 big questions that's always relevant in this conversation. The first is, how do we actually choose who's going to be realigned? So every teacher wants to know, is it going to be me? Is it going to impact me? And again, there is a policy-based approach to answering this question that directly aligns with what the district used last spring when we thought about program changes and what we're using now with leveling. The first thing we will always do is ask for volunteers. So if we've got too many second grade teachers in a campus and we need to reduce one of those, we're going to ask that second grade team if anybody wants to volunteer for the new location or grade level. If we don't have volunteers, then we go to these policy criteria of looking at certification. Do you actually have the credentials needed to move into this new role? Are you providing extra duties at your current campus? That would be really painful if we took you away from that. It's important to note that extra duties here are paid responsibilities. So you actually are getting a stipend for doing that work. It is not you're volunteering a few hours a week or you're doing a little extra hours here and there. It is a formal role that you have taken on and are getting paid for. We'll look at other professional background or work experience that may be relevant or specialized. And then we come to seniority. 2 things to note here about seniority. It is seniority at the district level, not at your campus, and in your equivalent position. So if we're talking about a teacher, we are looking at how long you've been a teacher in La Jolla ISD. One of the beautiful things about our district is we have folks who have gone from being a CNS staff member or a bus driver or a para to a teacher. It doesn't look at that whole history, it looks at your experience in the equivalent position, so as a teacher in this case. The final thing on this slide to note is these work successively in order. We only go to the next step if we didn't find somebody at the previous one. So if everybody has the same credentials, we're then going to look at extra duties. If everybody has the same extra duties or nobody is doing extra duties, we then go to step 3 and then to step 4. So these happen successively. Second question everybody wants to know, okay, you figured out it's me and I've got to be the one to move. Where am I going? We have criteria for this. Again, we want to be transparent. We want to have trust in this process and be clear. The first thing we're always going to do is keep you in your school. So you might move down the hall as opposed to move across town. If we can't do that, then we go to the rest of this. If we have to move you to another school, so it's an across-school change, we're going to try our best to keep you in the same grade level. You just saw 2 presentations ago, and to what Dr. Sorensen has said, we are asking people to do hard things for our students. We want to minimize the learning curve as much as possible, so we're going to keep you in the same grade level if we can. If we can't do either of those, same school or same grade level, we will have to look at a different grade level, but again, we're making sure that you are certified for that role. The way in which we fill the buckets here, so to speak, is we start by staffing our lowest performing schools. So back to those verified ratings, we look at that. We want our lowest performing schools to be fully staffed first, and so we fill them up, and then we go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one successively, trying to keep people as geographically close as possible. Like, we don't want somebody to have to move from Sullivan City to Palmview if we can help it, right? So we're trying to keep them contained into the space. Timeline, sorry I made that a bit too gray. It's hard to see, and that's my fault, but those things have already happened, which I mentioned to you before. We took these 10-day counts, we then reran the staffing against the guidelines and allocations, and then spent a big part of yesterday actually going over this line by line with principals to make sure they're aware of what's going on. As we sit here tonight and think about tomorrow, we are doing those final confirmations with the individual. So we're telling, hey, Mr. Little, you actually are the 3rd grade teacher that we're going to have to realign because we didn't have volunteers, and here's where you're going to go. and here's how we're going to help you. Dr. Gary's team is being super supportive in this effort. Like, we're providing moving supplies. We're there to help you actually get things moved, especially if you're making a cross-school change. Tuesday, after the long weekend, is when people will officially be in their new roles. So we'll have a couple of days in the long weekend to make that adjustment so that they're ready to go and start next week. To summarize what all this means, as we looked at the enrollment and as we looked at our staffing allocations, we are sharing with you the results of that work. At the elementary level, we looked across the board, so every grade level and special education. At the middle and high school levels, we ended up only reviewing special education for a few reasons. One, certifications have to come into play. An 8th grade teacher can't just go be a 3rd grade teacher, right? Or in some cases, the 7th grade teacher isn't automatically qualified to go be a 10th grade teacher either. So the secondary spaces are just unique. The other part that makes the secondary spaces a bit more unique is once the student schedule is set across their individual experience and the whole campus, changes to that can have huge ripple effects. All of that to say, it does not mean that we won't have adjustments in secondary schools with next year's staffing, because we're doing deep reviews of those allocations and actual participations in classrooms and programs. It just means that we're not making those changes right now as part of the leveling process. But we looked at special education across the board, across all levels. So all of this led to 23 teacher realignments. So there's 23 folks who come Tuesday will be doing something a little bit different than they were doing today. What we wanted to do is show you what that looks like based on that within school criteria and grade level criteria. So of those 23, we were able to keep 13 in their same school building. So this is a move down the hall, not a move across town. 10 we were not able to keep in their same building because there just wasn't a need in that building. So we are having to do 10 cross-school changes here. On the other hand, when we look at it by grade level, 12 are staying in their same grade level. Whether I'm staying in my school or going somewhere else, I'm going to be in my same grade level. 11 will have to change grade levels. And our team, sort of my folks sitting right behind me, are ready to go visit these classrooms, sit by these teachers, and make sure they're getting a good early start so that we have as seamless of a transition as possible. The final thing we want to share here is confirmation of where we landed. There are a bunch of check marks on these slides that now disappeared. So this is going to be a little harder, but we'll make sure that gets corrected for you. We'll also make sure this is shared clearly with the public. What this slide was meaning to do is show where we have landed in our decision related to where English-only pre-K classes will be versus our two-way programming. We looked at that based on a few factors. The first is based on where our current enrollment actually is. So how many students are at a given school. Then we looked at how many of those families told us, I want an English-only program. In most cases, in pre-K 3, there were not even close to enough students demanding an English-only program for us to justify offering it. Like you had 3 students or 5 students or 7 students. That doesn't make a whole classroom. But we want to make that opportunity available. So there are 4 schools that will be pre-K 3 English-only sites. I remember 2 of them out of the 4.
Dr. Little,
Yeah.
I just want to say to the public out loud, we will have this posted while we're in closed session.
Perfect.
This will not only be posted to the website, but this will be posted while we are in closed session. This is an unacceptable error. We should have this information. I know that this is not your error, but this is an unacceptable mistake. But while we are in closed session, Mr. Nagella, please make sure that this is addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So folks will be able to see where we're going to have those English-only options, where we're going to have our one-way and two-way dual language options. One thing to call out here on the one-way versus the two-way, both are dual language models. We have been doing one-way for a very long time in La Jolla ISD, and it is a good model. We're obviously trying, though, to transition to two-way because that gives us better results and better experiences for students. Sometimes, though, we don't have enough of a mix of students to make it a two-way program. Like if you've got 18 native Spanish speakers in a class and only 1 native English speaker, that is not a two-way classroom make, so it becomes a one-way classroom. What's important for y'all in the community and families to understand, though, is that native English speaker can still participate in that one-way classroom. So it doesn't close the door to participation. It really just changes the name of what the classroom is called, okay? So we'll clarify this, we'll make sure it's available, but we're showing that pre-K3, pre-K4 across all of our elementary schools. The last two things to note here is starting tomorrow morning, schools will be calling parents that requested an English-only option and letting them know, hey, we really hope you stay here in our two-way program, and here's all the reasons why. If you choose not to do this, here are the options in the district where you can go enroll, and we made sure that we have enough classrooms to fit all of those children if they request it, and to clarify that parents are going to be responsible for transporting their children to those locations. So that conversation will happen tomorrow with those families. Again, so hopefully if they are going to make a transition, they're ready to do that on Tuesday as well. So that is the summary and status of where we have landed with our leveling and realignment process.
I have a comment I would like to make, Dr. Little. I just want to say that I think it's amazing that y'all have accommodated the parents that we've heard from in this meeting and the last board meeting who have been asking for, the English-only classes. I think it's, great work, obviously, that has been put into this, and I think the community, parents, us, we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Litter, how many students are roughly going to be notified tomorrow? Do you know roughly what that count is?
For pre-K3, I think it's in the 40-ish range. I would have to go back and check again because there's 3 here, there's 5 there, there's 6 here sort of thing. The way we pick the locations, I didn't say this and I should, is based on 2 big factors. One is the schools that had the most numbers already. So we wanted to move the least number of students in this process, again, if they choose not to stay in the 2-way option. And then we wanted to make sure that we had good geographical diversity in those options. So we have a far west, far east, far north, and then more central location to be helpful to families if they're making that choice.
And then outside of the parents that are going to be notified, let's assume there's a parent that changes their mind and they do want to go to the one-way language program. Is there a process that they have to follow?
Yeah, so it's a transfer process in the district. So there's a little form that will help them fill it out, but that they have to fill out saying, I'm going from campus A to campus B. And then they will show up and be welcomed at that new campus.
Awesome. And is that form available online?
It is, yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
It is.
I appreciate that Dr. Sorensen made the correction. It was unfortunate we weren't able to see exactly what you were discussing, but I think we all got it. This has certainly been very informative, and so I appreciate you, Dr. Little, and your staff for informing not only the board, but the public and those viewing tonight about this very important item that's before us. I have a question, and I'm just curious, with the transition and with the addition, will there be additional FTEs hired? Will there be additional people hired to accommodate what you're discussing?
Yeah, what we really focus on through the leveling process is making those changes within the staff we have to avoid that.
Great.
So that's part of why you got those moves across schools, is because, hey, you didn't have enrollment to justify the need for staff here. That's why we're going to move you to another place in the district to balance that out. In Board Member Pena, my team helped me out. It's 42 in pre-K3.
Awesome, thank you. And I do have one more question around the realignment for the teachers. Will the parents of the students be notified that they're either losing a teacher or gaining a teacher?
Yes, letters will go out this week to families whose children are having a teacher change. So we've provided that to principals today. And it will communicate, hey, your current teacher is Mr. Little. Starting next week, your teacher will be Miss Miller. And that teacher will connect with you next week to sort of build that relationship.
Got it, thank you.
Well, Dr. Little, I really appreciate all the effort and all the work that you've put behind it. Certainly that was, like mentioned by my vice president, that was a concern of some of the folks that provided public comment not only last week, but this week as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and total team effort here. So even though I had the good pleasure of going through the slides, Ms. Miller and her team have been incredibly important to this process. And Ms. Ramos and Ms. Zuniga, again, have been fighting the good fight when it comes to pre-K and 2-way and have helped make this possible.
Yes. I also just, again, Ms. Miller, if you want to step forward and just really talk about any next steps that you want to talk about in terms of communication around staffing or any supports that your department in human capital is lending, I would appreciate it.
We are having each person that's being realigned come to the Human Capital Department. We're really meeting with them, telling them these are the expectations, this is the help you're going to get, these are the things that you take with you, these are the things that you leave in your classroom, and really just easing the stress of moving, whether it's down the hall or to another campus, answering any questions that they may have, but being very transparent on how this process is going and listening to any concerns or answering questions.
And again, just pointing out that it really is a cross-functional effort. Dr. Gary's team in operations is, providing materials and actually moving teachers for them. If they are moving to another building, that teachers don't have to do that on their own, but that facilities and operations is willing to do that, lovingly and helping people, ease the burden as much as possible. And so it really has been a real cross-functional effort across the district. When we say customer service, we mean it, even when times are challenging. And so I thank all the departments for coming together to really make this, what is not easy, as easy as possible when we have to make really tough decisions across the district.
Yes,
I also,
thank you.
can I say one more
Yes,
thing,
of
President? I
course.
am so sorry.
No,
I
go
really
ahead.
do see our partners in this work. Vanessa Brown from ATPE has been a partner with us as we've, talked about this with ATPE. Also Brenda Salinas from AFTE as we've, AFT, as we've worked with her and that teacher organization, really partnering with them step by step so that all of our teacher organizations do understand not only the why behind this work, but also really helping to kind of bring down the fear, increase the transparency, and also increase communication. We also, every single step of the way, have worked with our principals. We know how important principals are in carrying the honest, open, and transparent message as they lead on their campuses. We trust our principals every single day to have transparent, caring, and supportive conversations with their teachers. Honest, open, caring, and supportive conversations with their staff around the why, setting purpose, setting context, and helping their teachers understand all that's happening at the district and all that's happening within the context of their building. And so again, I want to thank the team that stands not only behind Dr. Little, but the team in human capital, both the deputy chiefs that sit over there that really are working with our principals to help them understand, do sense making on the campus as our principals are leading this work as well with our teachers and staff on campuses.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sorensen. I also want to reiterate what Dr. Sorensen said. I'm very grateful for the teacher organizations that come to our meetings and the vital input that you have provided us. It's been very important and it's very valuable to us. So thank you for being here again with us. Dr. Little, thank you for your presentations. And of course, Ms. Miller, thank you. Nice to see you. Speaking of Ms. Geary, Dr. Sarah Geary, you're next. So our next agenda item is the update on facilities, project, and how it impacts us. Dr. Geary?
Good evening, President Alvarez, Board, Dr. Sorensen, and La Jolla ISD. I am excited to share some updates tonight that will more fully explain some of the changes that you've seen around the district. So currently, we have more than a dozen projects that have been in process for quite some time, since 2022. They were initiated. We had several severe storms that came through. Those of you who live here and have been in the area know that we had hail, wind, water damage claims that were initiated in 2022. We also had the release of ESSER funds in 2022 that allowed for us to make several campus improvements. And I highlighted 3 projects tonight that I wanted to share you specific updates on because they have a more significant impact on the student experience. The first is our HVAC update and improvements, actually, and upgrades to La Jolla High School's gym and locker rooms. We have been working with the vendor this summer and this first few weeks of school to get an expedited work schedule. Originally, the plan was set that they would be in process until summer of 2025, a whole year that the gym would be without use. However, we've been very successful in our collaboration with the vendors, and they have really cut that timeline in half. So they should be finished with the gym and foyer areas by December 31st, so that on January 3rd, when we have our first district games for the girls, and January 6th, district games for the boys in basketball, we should be able to be back in the gym and have that experience for our families. We know that in every school district, but here in La Jolla especially, that experience with our families in the sports arena is very important. We can also have pep rallies again, which I know is very important for the staff and students as well. As you can see on the timeline on the slide, this upgrade was very important because it improves energy efficiency, and it also allows for the gym to be cooled quicker and stay nice and cool longer, which when you're exercising, that's a great thing, and it's better for the participants as well as the audience that will be there all, cheering and yelling like I was over at the Palmview High School the other day. So that's La Jolla High School. We also have another ESSER-funded HVAC improvement as well. By the way, at La Jolla High School, they had AC last year, and Memorial Middle School has AC and has had AC, but the upgrades are to make it more efficient. I just wanted to clarify that so no one thinks that the schools are without air at this time. This is another one of those projects that was initiated in 2022 and then was approved in 2023 and then has sat without making movement until this summer. So because of that, it's due to a variety of reasons. As you know, all the changes that have happened, communication gaps, as well as just discussions and coming into consensus over the projects themselves. So as you can see, we did have 1 week where the gym was closed to students' access, and they had an alternative site for practices for volleyball and so forth. But that was only 1 week, and we've been able to use the gym now. There will be continued updates throughout the fall in the gym, but they should not impact student experience at all, other than there may be workers coming in the evenings to make adjustments and that kind of thing. We also have the administrative offices for those who went to Memorial Middle School for the Meet the Teacher back to school time. They noticed that they had to go to alternative classrooms to visit with administration. We did have to relocate them temporarily so that during this time we could work on the administrative offices. And this vendor has been very accommodating with us in my specific instructions that we want to limit the areas that are impacting student experience to one area at a time rather than doing it all at the same time, right? So the administrative offices are closed right now, but they should be restored very soon. The target is this next week, but as with any kind of construction project, there could be some wiggle room there, but they should be finished very quickly so the administration group can move back to their offices and parents can go back to the normal place where they visit and check in for volunteering and all of that. Then the team will move to the fine arts area, and we chose the month of November to really focus in there. Those classrooms will be relocated to other classrooms around the campus. So if they're going to band class or orchestra or choir during those times or dance, they will have to go to an alternative classroom, and I'm sure the administration will be very clear in their communication with families and kids as to where they're going for that month. We chose November because we all know we're off for a week, so hopefully the student experience will only be impacted for those 3 weeks. And then we chose the other large project area, the cafeteria, for December, because we know we're closed for 2 weeks for the holidays. So in reality, for 2 weeks, the students will have to have their lunch in the gym. We did something similar at Chavez recently. It was very successful when we had to close the cafeteria for a similar project, where they'll eat in the gym, and they'll have their serving line and hot food and everything right in there. It's something different. The kids will do great, but I want to just be very transparent with the community that we want you to know what's going on as we move through. And the last update I wanted to share with you is about De Zavala. We have to acknowledge that the students at De Zavala last year did not have access to their gym or locker rooms for a year. And again, this project was delayed. It was initiated in 2022 from the storms. However, there were just delays, again, with communication gaps, decision making, and it did not get approved until, this last spring, 2024, it started to move forward. And since then, we've worked as a team to work with this vendor to expedite, again, this project, because it was pretty large scale. It impacted the roofs above the gym, AC, ceilings, flooring, the gym floor. The wood floor alone takes 4 to 6 weeks to be laid and cured. And then the locker rooms, the walls, ceilings, tile in the locker rooms all had to be pulled up because of water damage due to the wind and hail and all of that happened. So because of that, I can tell you that the roofs are done and they're moving into the interior work right now. As you can see the timeline on the screen, our goal is to have the locker room available for student use by September 16th, and that will be a great relief to the staff and to the students, because they've had to make alternate arrangements for over a year to change for PE every day, in addition to the sports, right? And then the gym access should be available for our games starting mid-October for whatever sports, or whether we have, if there's volleyball still going on at that point, or basketball initiating at that time. So these were, to me, were some great wins. They are challenges for our community, challenges for our kids, and for the staff that handle them. I do have to give credit to Ms. Claudia Gomez-Perez because she's worked with all of our athletic directors and coaches to reorganize and orchestrate the relocations of the gyms, the alternate gyms that we're using for these projects for the games and such. And I have to acknowledge the principals at each of these schools, because quite honestly, they are living it every day, and they have been great partners with us to get these projects done. So I want to thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. Do we have any questions? I think she's kept a little busy. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate all the hard work y'all are doing, especially for one of the middle schools that my daughter goes to. So they're traveling to other gyms and so forth. So this is great news to hear that the locker rooms will be available September 16th for them to actually go in there and change. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
I'm just going to call out a board member here that I spoke to last night, who happened to say that he was very pleased to be notified as a parent from 2 of the schools that his children attend. So Board Member Gomez, do you want to just say, as a parent?
Well, as a parent also, La Jolla High School, that's another school that my daughter goes to. So I'm very happy that you guys are changing the air conditioning and actually improving all that. The gym, unfortunately they don't get to be there for pep rallies, but I mean, that's always an upgrade that's going to happen, and I'm very pleased and happy for it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Being able to send the communication to the families yesterday was also a joint effort with Ms. Cantu's department and Mr. Nagella. I just really appreciate all the support so we can be transparent and provide that customer service, because those are the two areas in operations that we are really targeting to support this district for our kids.
And I want to thank you for acknowledging Blanca and her team for, informing the public about what you're doing. And especially, I appreciated Board Member Gomez, you referencing your children experiencing what's happening. And many of us today have referenced that we have family members and we have children as well that are in the school district. So we want everyone to know that we do have family members that attend this fine institution and this great school district of La Jolla. So thank you, Dr. Geary, for all the work you're doing. But please inform those that you work with. We're very grateful for everything they do to make sure that our campuses are clean, that our students are safe, and that they got a safe place to go to school and learn. So thank you for that.
Thank you, President Alvarez. I just have to say that we have one of the key team members here, Mr. Ray Cedillo. He is our Director of Facilities and Operations, and he has gone every day to these sites to follow up on the vendors.
You just stole my line.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was just going to thank our new Director of Facilities, Mr. Cedillo. Thank you for coming in like a storm.
Yes.
With all of your cheerful and chipper ways, as you help us, right? With all of your cheerful and chipper ways, as you really pour yourself into the work to really get projects going on behalf of the children and families of this district. And so thank you very much for stepping up and taking the assignment, sir. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And thank you, Dr. Geary. Okay, if we have no further questions, we're going to go ahead and move over to agenda item number 6, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are now moving over to agenda item number 7. And I ask that you bear with me as I read the following. Closed meeting, let me see, here it is. At this time, it is 7:53. We will go into the closed session under section Texas Government Code, section 551.001, 551.29, Texas Government Code 551.074, Texas Government Code 551.072, Texas Government Code 551.076, and Texas Government Code 551.0821 concerning any and all purposes permitted by the Act, including but not limited to the sections and purposes listed below. As again referenced, it is 7:53. And it is 9:55. Let me go ahead and repeat that for those that are viewing us. We are back from closed session. It is 9:55 p.m. Item number 9, action and discussion items. Approval of school and office supplies for warehouse, stock bid number 2024-58. Dr. Geary?
Good evening. Ms. Crespo and I are going to
Great.
co-facilitate this.
Good evening, members of the board. Dr. Sorensen, the Texas Administrative Code states that if bids or proposals cannot be resolved using best value or preferences, an award may be made by casting lots. This request for proposal that we are reviewing have 4 bids that are identical and will be awarded by casting lots. Dr. Gary?
So for item 9, the tab divider is multicolored numbered. It goes to Southwest School and Office Supply.
Great, thank you.
For item 107, Dimensions tape dust dispensers goes to Southwest School and Office Supply. For item 101, glue, 8-ounce sizes, goes to National Art and School Supplies. For item 87, the crayons, Crayola crayons, goes to Southwest School and Office Supply.
Those will be your recommendations for approving the bid.
Thank you very much. I don't think I've ever seen something like that before, but that was cool to see.
Me
That was
either.
really cool.
I was excited about
Ms.
it.
Crispo, and thank you, Ms. Geary, Dr. Geary. Do I have a motion for item number 1?
I move to approve item 9.1.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 9.2, approval of property and casualty insurance, CSP number 2025-02. Ms. Crispo?
Yes, sir. We are here to listen to questions that you may have about the item.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Crispo or staff regarding this particular agenda item?
No.
No. So we are recommending the award to be given to.
Good evening, President Alvarez, board members, Dr. Sorensen, administration. My name is Eli Rodriguez, Director of Risk Management. And we have an agenda presented here for our property and casualty insurance that covers insurance coverages for obviously property, our vehicles, law enforcement, and so on. Okay, and we present this agenda item for your authorization for approval, and we're choosing Shepherd Walton King as the agent of record. And we also include a second one, Montalvo Insurance, for a separate item that's on the agenda as well, because the other company did not provide a quote for that. So we have two vendors to create the complete package that we have before you. Any questions?
Can I go ahead and take a brief on this really quick? I need to consult with our attorney.
Sure.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we can go ahead and move forward. Do we have any questions for staff or Ms. Crispo?
No.
Okay. Seeing that we do not have any, let's see, do I have a, let me see. Do I have a motion for approval on 9.2 of property and casualty insurance, CSP number 2025-02? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.2, approval of property and casualty insurance.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, next agenda item, 9.3. Approval of agent during general election period, November 5th, 2024. Joseph?
Does the board have any questions about what's being requested?
Board members, does anyone have any questions regarding this particular agenda item 9.3? For Joseph?
No.
No.
Okay, we're very familiar with this. Seeing that we do not have one, the following item, 9.3, approval and appointment of agent during general election period, November 5th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.3.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you. 9.4, consider action regarding Level 3 GDBA grievance filed by Noelia Garza. So we're going to go ahead, we see that we have, I'm going to go ahead and do I have a motion? So let me go ahead and read this. The next agenda item is 9.5, consider board action regarding notice of proposed termination, correction, sorry. I got it. The next item is 9.4, consider action regarding Level 3 DGBA grievance filed by Noelia Garza. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve that we have stopped, looked, and listened, and we take no further action on this matter.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next agenda item is 9.4. 9.5. I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. 9.5, consider board action regarding notice of proposed termination of term contract.
Employees.
Correct, hold on. Oh, yeah. Term contract of employees as discussed in closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve this item, 9.5.
Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so 9.6. Let me make sure I got this right. The following item is 9.6, consider and take action to approve the termination of employee on term contract as discussed in closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.6.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 9.7. We now will move into item number 9.7 to hear an employee grievance from Ms. Adelia Ramirez, who has filed a Level 3 complaint under Board Policy DGBA Local. Ms. Ramirez has requested to hold this grievance in open session. The time is 10:04 p.m. Present tonight is Ms. Ramirez and her representative, Mr. Tony Connors. Philip Frazinet from the law firm of Thompson & Horton LLP is present to advise the board. Only board members are decision makers during Level 3 grievance. The board's objective tonight is to hear from Ms. Ramirez concerning her grievance. The board reviews grievances for violations of law or policy, or for decisions that are arbitrary or capricious. The board must apply only the facts presented in record to the applicable policy or law and make a decision. If there is a dispute as to what the policy means, then it is the board's responsibility to determine the meaning or application of policies. The record must support any actions we take. This Level 3 grievance is an appeal from the Level 2 decision and will be conducted as an administrative proceeding. For the record, the board has received a copy of the Level 2 record, including copies of Ms. Ramirez's written complaint forms, the written responses at the previous levels, the documents presented at the previous levels, and transcripts of the proceedings from those proceedings and argument of grievance and administration. These items will be considered as part of the record for this hearing. All parties, including the grievant, have received the same documents. No documents outside the established record from the previous levels will be considered by the board. During this hearing, the board may go into closed session to consult with its attorney under the terms of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071. If any board member wishes to seek the advice of counsel, please make your request known to me. At this time, I'd like to ask that all of those present silence their phones before we proceed with the hearing. Board Policy DGBA Local controls this grievance. Board Policy DGBA provides that the presiding officer may set reasonable time limits and guidelines for the presentations, including the opportunity for the employee to make a presentation based on the record and provide rebuttal, and an opportunity for clarifying questioning by the board. The employee will have 10 minutes to make her presentation. In your presentation, please identify your specific complaints and all relief you are requesting. An additional 2 minutes will be allotted to the attorney or employee for closing comments. To provide an accurate record of this proceeding, a transcript is being made. Please avoid talking when others are speaking. Members of the board may ask questions. Members of the board may question the attorney and or employee at the conclusion of their presentation. Members of the board are not subject to being questioned. I will serve as a timekeeper. When your time expires, I will signal you and you must stop your presentation. Are there any questions before we begin?
No.
If there are any board members who feel that he or she is unable to listen to the presentations tonight and render a fair or impartial decision, do we have any? Okay, then we can proceed. Mr. Connor, you may proceed, and again, you have 10 minutes. The time right now is
10:08.
10:08.
Good evening. Again, I'm Tony Connors, and I have the honor this evening to represent Ms. Ramirez for reconsideration of her April 26, 24 termination as a bus driver. While we fully appreciate that she is employed on an at-will basis, which means that she can be terminated for any lawful reason. But Ms. Ramirez has a right to, under Texas law and your board policies, DGBA and DCD, to seek reconsideration in this stop, look, and listen process. As the governing body of this district by appointment from the commissioner, you have the final say within the district whether to uphold or change this termination, notwithstanding her at-will status and the general deference to the administration. Before I briefly explain the basis for seeking reversal of her termination, let me introduce Ms. Ramirez. Before she was terminated, she had worked for a total of 29 years for this district, 28 of which as a bus driver, 1 year as an aide. And she had a solid work record over her 29 plus years. She didn't have any significant prior problems in her job record. You don't see multiple reprimands, sustained complaints, suspensions, or bad appraisals. And instead, she had good appraisals, and she was effective in providing services as a bus driver. On April 12, 2024, Ms. Ramirez was placed on unpaid suspension for alleged misconduct on one of her routes. When she asked for reasons and details, she was provided none. On April 16, 2024, Ms. Ramirez was terminated per the superintendent's letter for the sole reason of allegedly pulling a student's hair. When Ms. Ramirez asked for the name of the student details and to review the video, Human Resources Gloria Rodriguez denied this request. To seek reconsideration, we filed this grievance on April 30th to have her reinstated for the following reasons. That number one, the sole reason was pulling her hair, but Ms. Ramirez did not pull the student's hair on April 10th while picking up students at the JFK Elementary parking lot, as alleged in the police reports and statements in the investigative materials that are part of the record. When we filed the grievance, we requested information, and we obtained through the Texas Public Information Act the statements and reports that are in the record. But we also had an opportunity to review the video of this alleged incident on May 31st. We were able to do it by Zoom. And I understand you all have had a chance to look at the video. Our review of that video excerpt of this incident shows the following after we looked at it several times. That what it shows is that Ms. Ramirez had parked her assigned bus number 3 for pickup at RFK Elementary, and around the 15-minute mark, Ms. Ramirez is seen going back and forth on the center aisle to get the students settled in before they take off. But around the 15-12 mark, we see Ms. Ramirez in the driver's seat looking up at the rearview mirror, watching the kids, and then we see her get up and asking the kids to settle in their seats, to be in their seats, looking forward. And we see when she gets to the center bus, there's the student in question. He's on the left side with his head in the center aisle, playing around with the students in front of him and in back of him. And we don't have audio, but Ms. Ramirez appears to be telling the student to sit up and look forward, and she redirects him by briefly touching his head to sit up. This redirection worked because the student sits up and leans up against the window. There is no sign of distress, injury, no sign of excessive force, no pulling of the hair as indicated in the reports. We also see that a teacher, as we mentioned at level 2, Roy Martinez, was behind her, assisting her to get the students in their seats so they could leave safely. And as I said at level 2, I spoke to Teacher Martinez, and he had no recollection of this incident that I just covered, but he did say that she was a good bus driver and he had no prior problems with her. So in sum, the video does not support the allegations behind Ms. Ramirez's termination of pulling the student's hair. And I hope that you draw the same conclusions that we did, all our eyes looking at the video. The second reason for reversing a termination is that there were no criminal charges, much less conviction, since there was no pulling of the hair as shown by the video. And the parents declined to press charges, and Ms. Ramirez has the right to use physical force to redirect the students under the Texas Penal Code, Section 9.62. And there was no CPS findings against her. She wasn't even investigated by CPS. The third reason is that there are lesser measures besides termination available to effectively address the concerns and allegations regarding the April 10th, 24 incident, such as counseling, training, monitoring, or even a written warning. Given that Ms. Ramirez has had no prior problems over the 29 years and has a solid work record with no adverse criminal CPS findings and no further complaints by the parents, these lesser measures should have been used instead. The fourth reason is that Mrs. Ramirez's termination is contrary to your code of conduct adopted under Board Policy DH Exhibit that generally expects fair and equitable treatment, which obviously would exclude firing a solid employee with a 29-plus year record for something they did not do. It also has Standard 2.2 that prohibits harmful false statements as found in the statements from the Assistant Director and Sergeant Rodriguez that do not match up to the actual video, unless you don't want to believe your lying eyes. Also, Standard 2.4 allows her again to use reasonable force, and that standard says that you should not interfere with professional rights and privileges. So for these reasons, Ms. Ramirez is requesting reinstatement so that she can continue on as a bus driver, would be her 30th year. Please do not hide behind the at-will standard to not right a wrong in which you have the authority to do so as the governing body of the district, not limited to correcting legal actions, since you have full authority, even though you're not elected, you have full authority under the law to step in if you find it to be arbitrary, capricious, as is the case for Ms. Ramirez's termination. Unfortunately, when I came back, and I mentioned this at level 2, and it's in the transcript, I mentioned that I came here in April. We had a similar situation that my client was terminated, Hilda Rosales, based on videos, and the videos didn't show that, and you terminated her. You took no action. A month later, we went to the Texas Education Agency, since she was a certified educator. They reviewed the video, they reviewed the reports, and they did not take any action to her. They didn't understand why she was fired. You clearly have the authority. You have the authority to do this. So what I'm asking for you to do is to follow the real golden rule, not the one with the gold rules, not to hide behind lawyer telling you at will, it's legal. Just the law only sets minimum standards. You're not here about minimum standards. You're here about doing right. That's why you're here. It's because of the former board wasn't doing it right. And it wasn't just violating the law. It was not being right for your employees, not being right for your students. I ask that you do something. This would not have gone as far any other district. And now we're at least the third time. It's the fourth time here, and we're going to probably have no action? That's not right. That's not fair. You have so much authority. This is not the Sorensen or Morath district. This is the La Jolla Independent School District. You are charged by your ethics, by your position to right a wrong. And I'm out of time. I'm close out of time, but that is our initial presentation, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connors, Mr. Ramirez. I'm going to go ahead. The grievant has completed her presentation, and it is now time for the board to consider its issues presented. Yeah, hold on. Do any of the board members at this time have any questions for Ms. Ramirez or Mr. Connors? Please state your name for the record and ask the question, board member.
Anita Chavez. I have a question. So you all saw the video. We saw the video. And I suppose maybe just some more information to what led up to the touching of the child's head. Maybe just some.
Sure. But I've been doing this for 35 years. I represent a number of bus drivers, so I'm really familiar how things are done. Bus drivers are taught to have a procedure in place that before the bus moves, that all the students are sitting in their seats looking forward. No hands, no legs, no heads in the center aisle. And before they take off, and what the video shows is they're loading on the bus to go home, and they're waiting. And when the last kids are on the bus, the video shows her in the driver's seat looking at the rear view mirror, seeing the kids. She gets up and she's walking, and she's obviously, the students know they're supposed to do it. But this is April. They've been on that route since August. And she's giving them directives or directions. Come on, sit in your chair, do that. And as she's walking by, his head is in the center aisle. He He's playing with the kids in the front, playing with the kids in the back. That's what kids do. That's what I did. And she brushes his head, and he gets up, and he leans against the window, and that's it. And there's Mr. Martinez behind him. So she's got right to not just have procedures, verbal directions, but also physical force. And physical force doesn't mean body slam somebody. It could mean tap on the shoulder, redirecting him. And it worked. And there's no sign of injury, no sign of pain. So that's my interpretation of the video. And that's normally what happens. That's what they're supposed to do. Before they leave, they need to be in their seats, looking forward, nothing obstructing the center aisle.
Right. And then a follow-up question to that is, I understand that, kids sitting up, but in the video we saw there was more kids laying down in further back of the bus, and those kids were not handled in a similar manner as well. So I guess where...
Well, the sole basis of the termination was pulling that kid's hair, and that's what we focus in on. No one else has ever raised any concern about that, and I really wasn't paying attention to that. I was focusing on, did she pull his hair the way he reported to his parents? The only evidence is the video, and if you can believe your lying eyes or not, but no one else complained about anything else. She wasn't fired for any other reason than that one incident, and she never had that incident happen before. So it's a rare case that we have a single incident, and we have a pretty good visual proof of what happened or didn't happen.
Thank you.
Can you clarify what...
Excuse me, board member, for the record. Yeah, the mic. State your name, please. Thank you, Secretary Peña.
Alisa Peña, can you clarify what verbal actions were taken before the incident occurred?
Well, we don't have audio, but it looks like she's telling the students, come on, get in your seats, those kind of things. Because her mouth is moving, we don't have audio. But normally, good bus drivers, the first thing they do is they have an established procedure, and then if it's out of place, then they will make verbal directives, redirection, and if they have to get up, they do the walkthrough. If someone's still there, then they will tell them a nudge to get them to do it, and if they continue, then what they usually do is they call the teacher or administrator to come in and handle the situation. That's how they're trained in La Jolla. That's how they're trained in good districts across the valley and the state.
Can Ms. Ramirez tell us if there was what she had mentioned to him before the incident occurred?
My understanding that she was telling the kid that he needed to get in a seat. That was my understanding. We don't have the audio. She was not aware of it. We saw this video on May 31st. She had no idea what it was. It was a routine thing that happened day in, day out. So she doesn't have a recall exactly what was said. We didn't have the audio, so we can't tell you exactly what she said if that's your question.
Members of the board, do we have any other questions for Mr. Connors or Ms. Ramirez at this time?
No.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Seeing that we don't have any questions, Mr. Connors, you have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Oh, sorry, we do have a question. Please state your name.
Jessica Ochoa, and Mr. Connors, in the event you stated there's certain protocol, and we're assuming that she's following the protocol. In the event she had assistance, there was another person, a teacher, you said, why was that teacher not called for assistance? Why go to the effect of touching a child?
It lasted 3-4 seconds, and the teacher was right behind it. Part of the teacher's job, the teacher helps put the kids on the bus. The teacher came in after the kids were on the bus. This happened, this encounter lasted a few seconds. It worked. She put his hand in the direction of his head, he stood up and leaned against the window. So that, and no one has ever, there's been no allegations or suggestion until tonight that somehow protocol wasn't followed. The allegation was that she pulled his hair on April 10th. But teachers only come in afterwards or to assist if there's problems. If there are really serious problems, they call an assistant principal administrator who's on duty in the bus area. But this was a brief encounter that did not escalate. It worked. There was no problems. She had no idea who the student was, what the date was, until we got the reports, and then we were able to look at the video, and the video didn't match up to the statements by the assistant transportation director reviewing the video and Sergeant Rodriguez who reviewed the video.
We have viewed the video.
Yes,
Interpretation
the lawyer
is
informed me as well.
different. And the parents did file a report.
But they declined to file a complaint, and there was no prosecution.
Sure, but a report was still filed. So there is
You can report on everything. You can report on anything, but it has to be a conviction. She was never convicted. She was never even, nothing ever happened. But remind you that she had 9.62, and the allegation that the parents relayed was touching, and they had video evidence which was contrary. So no prosecutor is going to take a case like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Do any board members have any other questions for Mr. Connors or Ms. Ramirez at this time? Mr. Connors, seeing that we don't have any questions, any further questions, you do have 2 minutes for closing remarks, both you or Ms. Ramirez.
Sure. My closing remarks are good, just a brief summary, but just pleading with you that you all need to support your employees. If the administration comes forward, well, first of all, grievances are one of the rare times that you get to hear information firsthand from your employees. most of and you only have power when you're here and by majority vote at a duly called meeting. And most of the stuff you hear is what the board, what the administration chooses to bring to you. But you all have the authority, notwithstanding the superintendent being the chief executive administrative officer and having a general deference. You have authority to step in. And boards across the state step in situations where if someone has 29 years of experience, no prior problems, no criminal charges or convictions, if there was a pulling of hair, there would have been a mandatory report to CPS. Apparently there wasn't a CPS report, and there was no CPS investigation as far as we can tell, and there were no CPRS findings. But a board needs to step in and right the wrong, and that you're brought in to do that. The law is just the minimum standard. You are to do things that are right and wrong, and we believe it's arbitrary and capricious because she was fired for something that she didn't do. There were other things you could do to address it, more training, counseling, and 29 years of good service with no problems. Someone shouldn't be treated this way. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Would you think it was right to fire somebody if it was you in that situation? I think the answer on the golden rule is no. So I'm asking you to do your job and step in and say, based on what we have.
Thank you, Mr. Connors, for your
Thank
2
you.
minutes are up. And your remarks are well noted.
Thank you.
The grievant has completed her presentation and it's now time for the board to consider its decision on its issues presented. The board will now deliberate off record on these issues alone in consultation with the board's legal counsel under Texas Government Code, section 551.071 and 551.074. The board will now reconvene in open session. The board will reconvene in open session to announce its decision. Does the grievant object? Does the grievant object? Great, thank you. It is now 10:29 and we'll be right back. We will now reconvene and reassume the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. The time is now 11:12 p.m. Board, do I hear a motion for agenda item 9.7 regarding level 3 grievance filed by Ms. Adalina Ramirez?
I move that we have stopped, looked, and listened, and the board takes no further action on this matter.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. This concludes the hearing on this matter. A letter notifying the parties of action of the board shall be prepared and issued to the parties as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm not sure if I was supposed to do that, but do it anyway. Agenda item number 10 is the calendars, A through D. September 2nd, 2024, we have holiday. September 11th, 2024, we have a regular board meeting. September 25th, 2024, regular board meeting. Agenda item 11, Dr. Sorensen has a slide or some slides that she'd like to present to the board.
Yes, so President Alvarez, I would like to actually invite you to announce to our community the new way this year that we are going to do board meetings for student recognitions this year. So, Board President, I'm sorry, it's very late.
Yes.
President Alvarez, if you could do the honors of announcing to our community how we'll be doing student recognitions this year.
Great. So good evening, everyone, for those that are still up and for those in attendance. I'm excited to announce that the school board will hold a series of special board meetings this school year entirely focused on student recognitions. By holding these special meetings, we ensure that our students receive the spotlight they deserve without the constraints of a regular agenda. These meetings will take place at the La Jolla ISD Performing Arts Center at 6 p.m. on the following dates: Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, Wednesday, March 26th, 2025, Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. We look forward to celebrating the hard work and success of our students in a setting dedicated to honoring their achievements. We will ensure preparations are aligned to make these events memorable for our students, their families, and the communities. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, Dr. Sorensen. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Absolutely not. It is a long evening. So again, just thank everybody for their hard work, and we will continue to move forward as a team.
Members of the board, do you have anything you'd like to share with other members of the board, or the community, or those viewing?
No.
I'd just like to take this opportunity again. Thank you very much. As you can tell, we put a lot of time and a lot of energy making sure that that we do what's in the best interest of our students. And so we thank all of those that are continuing to view us, those that attend our meetings, and especially to my board members. We certainly have the best board by far than any other district in South Texas, or I would say in the state of Texas. So it's a privilege to serve on the board with each and every one of you. So with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I move to adjourn this meeting at 11:16 p.m.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Everyone have a good evening. Be safe traveling home.